nothing, and here you have the opportunity to be in business with someone who's just wildly successful. So is it worth, what's it worth, what price is it worth? And if you walk away and you have no other funding sources, then it might be worth taking what you or I, just from the surface, might consider a bad deal. But, okay, so I give up 35%, so 70% of a multi-million-dollar company, is that a good deal?
Yeah.
Yeah. So hard to say unless you're in that situation. Hey, one of the things I want to mention too is I get the Karis newsletter. He's the guy that's written books, and I've been to a seminar. He brings up an interesting point. We talked about limited authority in here, where you're dealing with somebody who only has limited authority. And I was going to show you a film today, and I'll probably do that towards the also. I'll get the audio, try to get the audio working in here, where somebody was negotiating with somebody who has limited authority. And his take on it is it's actually an advantage. Why would having limited authority be an advantage?
I think in certain situations, if you or someone's trying to press you to make a move, it's like I have to talk to someone else first. I can't commit.
Yeah, so
I mean, it also kind of gives you that ability to walk away in a sense, because if they keep pressuring you, I can't.
You can gracefully walk away. Right. And they've got to either decide, do I want to deal with your boss now or somebody else, which can be an intimidating situation, or am I okay taking, I've got to figure another way around this, or I've got to take your deal.
Kind of gives you like multiple chances to negotiate as well, because like you and I could negotiate, and I could be like, oh, I got to talk to my boss, and then you have to renegotiate with him. So it kind of just gives you more opportunities to get what you want.
Yeah, I just never really looked at it in that frame, but think about when you guys are dealing with, and one thing with car dealers, you're going to deal with the salesperson, but that deal's not going to be finalized until they take it to the sales manager, and at that point they can force you to renegotiate. And the salesperson will tell you, this is tentative, I think I can do this, but they also use that crutch. But also remember, you guys can use this too. Anytime I use it, I just say I have to run things by my wife, I can't make a deal, but I've got a commitment in the meantime, something that we can kind of use as a baseline, and then I may be able to come back and say, well, I can't do that, sorry, we're just not, and I was a little aggressive, but here's what I might be able to do, and maybe knock a little bit more off of it. And that's what I look at too. I don't look at big wins a lot of times. I just think if you look at incrementally what you can save with each deal over the course of your life, and the more you negotiate, the more you can save, it can add up to be pretty good numbers. And you get there by just asking. All right, so let's go on with relationships, another really important thing in negotiation. All right, so first thing is talks about the adequacy of established approaches to research and understanding relationships, and what are the key elements. Because the first thing, negotiation within relationships takes place over time, and so my notes, and you guys may be experiencing this already, you have a girlfriend, and it's Christmas time, and you got to figure out which parents, where are we going to spend Thanksgiving, when are we going to spend New Year's, and that is a negotiation, and it occurs over time, and it actually, in that situation, it never ends. It's every year you have a new negotiation of, well, we spent last Christmas with your folks, and then it gets really more convoluted than one of the situations I'm in, where you've got step-parents, the split parents, and girlfriend's parents, so it spreads people pretty thin, but all that's got to be negotiated. Negotiation is often a way to discuss it, not a way to discuss an issue, but a way to learn more about the other party, increase interdependence, and then sometimes resolution of simple distributive issues has complications for the future, because how you settle one may kind of set a tone for future negotiations. All right, so distributive issues with relationships can be emotionally hot. Negotiating within relationships may never end. If one party feels very strongly about an issue, it's going to turn distributive, and that might keep you from working on the relationship, because now we have kind of a hostile start to the relationship. Parties may defer negotiations over tough issues to start on the right foot. We've talked about that, trying to find some common ground up front, and then moving on to maybe the tougher issues. Attempt to anticipate future and negotiate everything up front is impossible. And there's issues on which parties truly disagree and may never go away. So look at my notes, anticipating future issues. Two people who want to start a business have no idea how the relationship's going to evolve over time. And we've had, even in our small, how many of you guys are in partnerships in your business? Most of you? Okay, so what's going to happen at the end of a year when some people want out and some people want to continue?
We're gonna have to have a discussion.
Or you got to negotiate what's going to happen. And we've had that where one party bows out and the two other people go on. And actually last year, the two that went on were really successful. Ended up selling the company for about $7,500 and getting internships in New York for the summer. But one person had bailed out of that deal. So, and think about it. What's probably the most prevalent partnership in our society is marriage. Okay, what's the success rate? About 50%. Okay, so think about that. Most people supposedly love each other. And you guys are in partnerships, which is why, and you probably already, it doesn't take long to figure out different people have different agendas. And it's very hard to have a really smooth partnership, which is why I recommend, and for your business now, it's actually easier and probably better, but you guys get out into the real world, if at all possible, I would try to stay out of partnerships. It's just easier, cleaner to do if you're running it on your own. And that, a lot of times that requires debt. And once again, it may be a situation, take the Shark Tank situation, that may be your only and best option. Okay? Because once they agree to a deal, like it or not, they're in partnership. But hopefully, in the case, if you're going to do that, those people are going to bring something to the table that offsets what you're giving away in your equity in the company. Yes?
Was the person going on Shark Tank showing off his business that he started here at Florida State?
Yes. As a matter of fact, when I read, you didn't get the email, but I think the entrepreneurship major got it. I think it said that he invented this when he was like 13 or something. And I think he furthered it on while he was here. But if you get a chance, you guys that aren't majors, it's next Tuesday afternoon at Turnbull, and it's at 3:30, I think. It's called 7 Under 30. So it's 7 people, Florida State students, that have started a business under the age of 30 and are doing well. And I think 4 of them are entrepreneurship majors. One of them is his partner is like one of my son's roommates all through college, and then I taught Sam also. They developed something called Good Wipes, which are like body, if you're walking and sweaty, you can get them in all different sizes that you can kind of dry yourself off or clean up before you go in maybe to an interview or something when you've had to walk across something, you're sweating. And I think they have distribution of 400 something stores right now. So be interesting. I'm definitely going to meet up with Sam when he comes, but yeah, those people are all businesses started while at Florida State. All right, so then some issues never go away, and so roommates, it talks about in the book, and there's one messy and one's clean. That issue's not going to go away unless you break the partnership. Have any of you guys had roommate situations that you just next year it's gone? You know there's no way to resolve because, and that's a simple example, but your differences can be so divided that there's no resolution. Your best thing is to go separate ways. And that's the thing, you don't want to get caught in a partnership like that, especially if they have things that they bring to the table. So many negotiations, the other person is the focal problem, and if that's the roommate situation, that is the case. In some negotiation, relationship preservation is the overarching negotiation goal, and so both people are going to have to make concessions to be able to make the relationship survive. And sometimes you think that promotes the best deal you can get. Not necessarily. Sometimes you may have to give to save a relationship or somebody's free time that they can't work like they've been working, and that may hurt the company, but they have to preserve maybe a personal relationship or something. All right, so negotiations in communal relationships, and so that's parties that share strong sharing relationships, more cooperative and empathetic, which makes sense because these are people we care about, better quality agreements, perform better on both decision making and motor tasks, focus attention on the other party's outcomes as well as their own, because we're in a relationship with these people, and focus attention on the norms that develop about the way when they work together. But They're more likely to share information, which makes sense also, more likely to use indirect communication, and maybe more likely to use compromise. Okay, but look at the notes. Data does not support the fact that parties in close relationships produce better solutions. Why?
They're objective.
Right. What clouds their actual objective decision making?
Feelings, relationships.
Salvaging the relationship, emotions overtake logic in that situation. So just because there's more sharing, there's more compromise, but it doesn't necessarily mean it promotes the best deal. Studies found that parties who did not have a close relationship produced better integrated solutions. Okay? Because they're not focused all solely on the relationship. So parties in relationships may not push hard for a preferred solution to minimize the conflict level in the relationship. So at that point, we're just sacrificing outcome for relationship. All right, so 3 things in managing negotiations with the relationships. We'll talk about these individual. And I mentioned something the other day about reputation. Perpetual, perceptual, and highly subjective in nature. An individual can have a number of different reputations. You guys ever meet somebody? I know I had, and you guys will probably relate to this. You guys played like Little League Baseball and flag football and all that? Did the coaches ever get like into arguments and stuff? You guys saw that? Yeah, and so there was somebody that I coached against for a number of years, and from being a coach against that person, I thought the guy was an ass. Okay? Now, later on, I got to know that person, and they're really pretty nice. It was a perception that we saw, and probably the situation that we were in, where unfortunately most males are highly competitive, and that kind of takes precedent over relationships at times. So you can judge people without knowing them, and I think we do that. And so that's why you guys also, do you think people judge you sometimes when they don't, even though they don't know you? So what do they judge you on? Your appearance, how you act, how you treat people, and all those things can stick with you. That's why it's really important to guard your reputation. It's shaped by past behavior. That is how you get your reputation. It's influenced by your personal characteristics and accomplishment. Develops over time. Once developed, it's hard to change, especially if a large number of people have that perception of your reputation. And then negative reputations are difficult to repair. It's hard to overcome once you get a reputation. Shaped by past behavior, direct reputations, what we perceive may be different than hearsay reputations. You guys ask somebody, hey, so-and-so asked me out, what do you know about him? Okay, then you know nothing about him, but you're now trusting what somebody else is telling you. That's a hearsay. And it may have been, hearsay reputation may be totally different circumstances, and then repairing a negative reputation, extremely challenging when it's held by many people.
How important do you think your social media presence is to your reputation?
I think it depends on the venue. I've had more than one employer tell me that the first thing they do after getting resumes and trying to narrow down who they're going to hire, they go look at their social media stuff.
Yeah, I'm just saying that because this one girl I went out with, she said she didn't know me, so she stalked my Instagram just to see who I was, and like checked other people's photos of me to see who I was.
Okay, so I can look at that 2 ways. I could say, number one, you might want to run. But on the other hand, I can also say somebody was being awful cautious about trying to vet you as best they could before accepting an offer to go out. And that's what employers are doing. They're vetting you via your social media accounts. So do you think that's your reputation that you portray in your social media can be important to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be damaging also. And that's why, and I know especially if you guys, anybody goes into law enforcement, anything that's deleted, it doesn't matter. Anything that's been on your social media page, they're going to find it. And they're going to dig that deep.
Would you say law enforcement or like really big corporations do that?
I would assume big corporations do it. I don't know that. I know for a fact that law enforcement does. I know people who have been through that.
I know I have a friend who, like, her boyfriend, they've been together for a long time, but he's going into law enforcement, and they were checking her, her Instagram and stuff like that. And, like, they said that, like, there's certain things that she posted that look bad, like, on him or something.
There you go. And that, you know, is it fair or not? The reality is it's the world we live in. You know, interesting question. Does your employer have any business mandating, or what you do in your own time, is that any of your employer's business?
Yes, because how you choose to represent yourself is a good indication of how you will represent their company. And if you're putting their image at stake, then they have the right not to hire you.
It depends on the position, because sometimes it's about your output within the corporation instead of what you like.
Yeah, but if I get arrested for selling drugs, okay, it's not gonna happen, but if I do, I'm just making a hypothetical.
I'm a very cautious man.
What's the first thing it's gonna say? It's gonna say Bob Garner, Florida State professor. So at that point, does your reputation damage the reputation of your employer?
Yeah.
And with social media, it's just more prominent than it ever was before we had social media.
There was an example last week, I forget the company, but there was a woman bike riding next to the president's motorcade, and she flipped him off, and there's a picture from behind, but that company figured out that it was her, and she got fired. She got quoted saying that she thought that it was worth it, and she would go back and do it again. But they figured out who she was, and now it says that company's employee was being disrespectful.
Exactly.
I know the one that went really viral was the dude that went through like the Chick-fil-A drive-through and was like just berating the person right there about like the whole Chick-fil-A not being supportive of gay marriage or something. And the guy was just berating the employee. The employee was like trying to be so nice, like, sir, I'm sorry, you know, I'm just working here. I'm not representing like, you know, in a management capacity. But he was just berating this person, and he put it on YouTube, and he got fired. And they followed up like a year later, and he was on like unemployment stuff because he couldn't find a job because no one wanted to hire him.
Yeah, and who was the other? There was a ESPN reporter that got fired for berating a Uber driver. You guys ever see that? Yeah. Do you know who I am? And she just and she got fired because of that. So also, and now especially, guys, is there anything that happens if somebody's not filming on a cell phone camera?
The founder of Uber actually got in a lot of trouble because he got in an argument with an Uber driver. The Uber driver was like, "Oh, Uber used to be so good. Now you're getting paid less and less." And he's like, "Some people want to blame everyone but themselves." And he's like, "You're not working hard enough. Like, don't blame me." And anyways, he was like basically cursing him off. And the founder of Uber is getting like fired.
He already did. He's not part. He's on the. He's not CEO anymore.
That's because it's sexual harassment.
I mean,
No, there's
yeah,
years that goes to that.
But still, I mean, it goes to the point and that anything you guys do today, somebody's watching. And I know any of you guys go overseas, like London, they have the CC, what is it called, CCTV or something,
Yeah.
where pretty much they can see what goes on anywhere.
Yeah, but a lot of that, the CCTV, like a lot of it is threat, because I asked when I was over there, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like everyone thinks we have them all turned on all the time, so they think they're being watched for the most part. Like they're not actually."
Well, it's still a lot of cities.
Sitting there, yeah.
A lot of cities have that stuff too. And think about, like, most of the celebrities too. I know Tiger Woods, remember the deal with him? He lost sponsorships after that deal because, once again, and those people in those positions have what's called morality clauses in their contracts that basically says if you breach a certain moral standard that can hurt the corporation, then we have the right to break that contract and let them go. And I know my friend that worked at Accenture, I asked him about that because Tiger used to be for Accenture, and they held on to him for a while, and he said the contract didn't allow them to fire him until Tiger admitted that he had infidelity. So until he admitted it, they weren't able to fire him, but the day he did, they dropped him, let him go. So think about Lance Armstrong. Okay, that guy was an American hero. And what happened to his reputation? Got trashed in wine. You guys remember? Yeah, doping. Yeah. And that's a guy, I don't know telling how many millions of dollars that cost him. He was a spokesperson for the United States Post Office and speaking events and all, and then that one single thing. And once again, it's hard to repair your reputation once something like that happens, especially if it's widely held. So you gotta, very important to protect your reputation. Trust, an individual's belief and willingness to act on the words, actions, decisions of others. So there's three things that contribute to trust. Individuals' chronic disposition towards trust. I asked that the other day. Some of you are naturally skeptical by nature. Some of you are very trusting by nature. So that's first thing that shapes it. 2, situational factors. 3, history of the relationship between the parties. And that's why generally if you have a relationship and it becomes ongoing, it's because you have a relationship of trust. Most of us don't stay in relationships if you don't trust somebody. And that is once again, you guys going towards relationships, what's the single most important thing in a relationship? I think it's trust. I mean, if I can't trust my other party to, when I'm not around them, to behave in good ways, then I think it would be miserable having to worry about something like that all the time. And that's why trust is so important, and that's why dealing with people in business, vendors, and relationship, and good salespeople are people that build trust. And how do you build trust? You do what you're going to say. You promise things that you can deliver and carry them out. And that's how trust is built. All right, so recent research on trust. Many people approach a new relationship with an unknown other party with remarkable high levels of trust, and most of us give people the benefit of the doubt until they violate the trust. Tends to cue cooperative behavior. If I trust you, then yes, there's probably more of a chance we're going to be in an integrated negotiation. And then individuals' motives also shape trust and expectations of the other's behavior. Look at my notes, people who are more cooperatively motivated report higher initial trust of the other party. Trustors, those trusted may focus on different things as trust is being built. And then nature of the negotiation task can shape how parties judge the trust. Little trust may be expected in a distributive negotiation, where more trust might be expected in an integrated negotiation. When you guys are dealing with car dealers, do you think they're, for the most part, trustworthy? Hopefully. Especially, do you think new car dealers would have more reason to be trustworthy than used car dealers? Yeah, because that's repeat business. And I know several of the upper-end car companies take service to the next level because they understand the value of one repeat purchase. And people that turn over cars, they only drive them 3 or 4 years, then buy that new car. They want to be able to deal with people that they trust. All right, greater expectation of trust between negotiators leads to greater information sharing, and also similar greater expectation of mistrust makes us not share information. Greater information of sharing enhances effectiveness and a good negotiation outcome. And then the distributive process will lead us to see the negotiation dialogue, critical events in the dialogue, largely about the negotiation task. And then once again, if we focus only on task, we're not really paying attention to trust or the relationship. All right, trust increases the likelihood the negotiation will proceed on a favorable course. Next one, face-to-face negotiation encourages greater trust than negotiations online. Why? Why should it?
The body language.
What's that? Body language? Eye contact?
I was just going to say, you're in the room with that person, you know what I mean?
It's personal.
Yeah.
But what about, so online could mean many things. It could mean email, but it also could mean virtual. What about virtual? When you're actually still able to see the person, you're just not in the same room.
You can always hang on.
You still think there's a gap, a space between? Yeah, and once again, that can help you or hurt you. Hey, if you form that relationship, what happens when now, go back to what research said about when we have a relationship. We're more willing to give and compromise when we're dealing with somebody we have a relationship with. And that's, I mean, to me, the biggest takeaway from you guys is, when you guys are dealing with vendors, especially, or customers in your businesses, you want ongoing relationships. I want people to buy multiple times with me. I want my vendors to be with me long term. And how do you do that? You do that relationship of trust, and you do that by doing what you say you're going to do. And that's the biggest thing. Is you guys ever heard under promise and over deliver? It's very true. What happens if you promise something you can't do? You lose trust. Right. So next time, hey, I can get your shipment there. Guarantee I can get it there in 2 days. It doesn't make it, and it shuts down their customer's line. They're not going to trust you next time you have that situation.
What do you think is more powerful, an untrustworthy action that you make, or a trustworthy action in your overall?
I think an untrustworthy action, because it's same thing. What's more in your life? What do you learn more from having success or making mistakes? Why?
Because it hurts.
Because there's pain involved. Right. Same thing with mistrust. With mistrust, there's more damage done than with trust, deposits of trust. So I think that's more dangerous. And once again, once you get a lack of trust, then go back to reputation. What is your reputation now?
I see. So in your personal experience, if someone had a history of trustworthy actions, and then they had one untrustworthy action, how would that affect your viewpoint on them?
I would go forward with them, but a little more cautiously than before.
All right.
I'm not going to cut somebody that I've had a history of over time and they have one bad deal, but I'm also not going to treat them like I can trust them 100% because they showed that I can't.
And in the future, like months, years later?
I would probably give them little stuff to be able to gain their trust back.
All right.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
I'm dealing right now. I have some property down in Wakulla County, and we cut some trees last year. So I was in the process of getting them replanted, and one for conservation, two for long-term value of your property. But you got to spend some money to do it. So the guy that was helping me all last year, I met with him 6 weeks ago and discussed the plan, and he said, "Okay, I'll get back with you on the price." I still haven't heard from him. So I've now called somebody else, and I moved on. So that guy contacts me now. He blew my trust. And plus, now the new people that I contacted said we have to wait till next year because there's a time you do it. You got to spray in September, October, and then you plant like now, and it's too late to get all that done this year. So it's cost me money to actually do that. So would you use that person if he came back? And
No.
okay, or the other thing, and I've thought about it, but I'm probably not going to, is leveraging that person and going, look, you violated trust. I can't count on you. You want back in, you're going to have to buy your way back in. You're going to have to do it significantly cheaper than the other party.
How long did you wait on that guy? Like 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I've never heard from him. So, and honestly, I got busy, and it shouldn't be my responsibility when somebody says, hey, let me get with my company and get you prices and times and dates, then I'm not going to. The older I get, the less, I guess, willing I am to call people to try to give them money.
Right.
I mean, there's plenty of people that want to take my money. So I'm not going to beg you to do business with me. And I hate it because I like the guy. Real Southern guy, real personable, just really like the guy, but he blew trust. So how do I know he's going to show up next year?
One of my mentors actually, when discussing in-person meeting versus like virtual reality meetings, said something to him about virtual reality. He was like, it doesn't matter how far technology gets, it'll never be as personal as in person, just because of the little secondary things that happen when you're in person. Like things that have nothing to do with the meeting. You might drop something and then pick it up. You might say a joke that you would have never said otherwise because you have more to work with. You have the surroundings, you have the place. And he's saying it's the secondary things that happen when you're in person that affect the meeting that you do not get when you use technology.
Well, I agree. You guys like in your job interview, would you rather be interviewed in somebody in person or virtual? Put me in the room. I want to, but more and more now, the virtual thing's coming into play because time, expense, money, because companies that interview you, most cases they'll fly you down somewhere, put you up in a hotel, so that whole process is expensive, and if the company thinks they can gain the same thing by having you sit at a computer, then they're not going to spend that money, but I agree, I think you lose the personal touch when you're not in the same place. All right. Negotiators who are representing others' interests rather than their own interests tend to behave in a less trusting way. And look at my notes. They don't perceive that they are personally involved in a relationship and can rationalize they are merely looking out for their client. So if you hire an agent to represent you, in most cases those agents are not worried about relationship at all, but they justify it by saying, well, it's not me, I'm dealing on behalf of my client. And that's what gives them the ammo to act the way they act, which kind of hide behind it. All right, so repairing trust. You guys agree with this? The more severe the breach of trust, the more difficult it is to repair trust? Ladies, if your man tells you that he has to break a date or something, that something really important family issue came up and you found out he went to the ball game with his friends, okay, is that severe? What if you found out he actually went out with somebody else? Is that more severe? Yeah. So the severity of the breach of trust can affect how fast you are forgiven from that also. And same thing in business. The guy that, why is it so severe? The story I just told you about the trees. Because it cost me money. So that is a severe breach. Okay, if it didn't cost me any money, I can get over it a little better. But when somebody gets into your pocket, then we think twice about doing business with those people the next time. If a party has a good past relationship, it's easier to repair trust? Absolutely. And that goes back to what Trevor asked. If I've had a continuous relationship with this person and they have one slip up, I'm not going to cut them off for that. But I'm not going to totally grant them 100% immunity either because they did violate trust. Interesting things here. The sooner an apology occurs, the more effective the apology is likely to be. Okay, go back to Lance Armstrong. Did he apologize at first?
No.
What did he do?
He
He denied. So why did he finally, so who believes his apology was sincere? Anybody? Why did he apologize then? Because he got caught and he had to. There was no way out of it. So is that a sincere apology?
No.
To the situation, sincere because now you can hide.
I doubt he regrets it.
Regrets using the drugs?
Yes.
Didn't he get all this stuff stripped from him?
I think he regrets it.
I mean, it still made him a lot of money.
He's also defending, saying like that's the only way he could compete with everyone else.
Yeah, because I heard from one of the statistics from it that they had to, because so many people were doping, give one of the Tour de France titles to the 37th place rider.
Everyone was doping them, taking steroids and doping.
Yeah, so he's still the best of the best. He's the best out of the people, but he's still cheating.
It was ironic because in this specific case, there was a video, or I guess it was a mockumentary on Netflix called, anyone seen it? Our King's Culture. It's like, it's about the Tour de France and it has Andy Samberg in it, and it's like, he makes a cameo in the movie, and at first it's like an anonymous person talking about the Tour de France and the doping going on, and then like halfway through the movie, they like have a mishap and they show Lance Armstrong's face for the rest of the movie, and he's kind of like joking and telling like, yeah, like everyone does it, like, what am I gonna do? So I mean, I don't know if he made light of it by doing that, but like kind of like showed that like.
Well, and that gets to that ethical dilemma. If you're not quite good enough to be at the top, then is it worth cheating and taking that risk to get there? And if you don't, then you're not going to get those big contracts and make that big money.
It goes from sports into a different category.
It's a roll of the dice. Okay, but the sooner you come out and apologize, the more sincere it is. And I think that's honest. Why? Because that's a natural. If you guys are truly do something to hurt somebody and you're truly sorry, wouldn't you apologize immediately? What does denying do to the apology? If you have to apologize later after you've denied.
It's not fine. It's like
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's credible. Same thing in President Clinton. I did not have sex with that woman.
He said it just like that.
But the apology then later on, I think, is insincere. And it's more forced than it is willing. And so you guys have to evaluate that too. Or why? So what happens if, you know, and I want to go back and preface one thing though. The guy that I'm dealing with, one thing that I would kind of wait to see though, what if he's had an extenuating circumstance in a family or something? So there's always reasons. I want to know why, but you know, I'm fairly certain in this case he just dropped the ball. Okay, so that's one of the things too, is as a manager, I've made that mistake before, is always try to find out, before you rush to judgment, know all the facts. Okay, so I've had employees that didn't show up, and we got crushed at lunch one time, and they walk in, and I go, where have you been, or something, kid's in the hospital. Okay, that's probably not the best approach for that. The first thing you should do is say, hey, I know you wouldn't not show up on purpose, is everything okay? That's a whole different tone than start criticizing somebody before you know the circumstances. And that could lead to possibly an excuse to violation of trust, but regardless of that, and this is a lesson for you guys too, even with your teachers, if you're missing class or something, the circumstances got to be pretty bad with communication the way it is today for you to not notify us of what's going on, right? I mean, understand things happen, but for the most part, your credibility is going to be better if you keep us informed. Same thing with anybody that you have any kind of business relationship with. I mean, would you guys not show up to work one day and just not call or not? I mean, I'd have to be in the hospital and not able to do that, and then I would tell my wife to do it. You know, I would find a way to get a message to my employer that, and that goes to that whole thing of trust also. So the more sincere the apology is, the more effective it is in repairing trust. Okay, and sincerity, I think, has to do with timing a lot too. The sooner it comes, and how sincere do you believe that person is in apology. But what's the thing to do? Try to stay away from having to apologize. I got a boss that I worked for in the past that's really good at apologizing. Well, know why they're really good at apologizing? Because they do it a lot. Wouldn't it be better to stop doing stuff that you had to apologize for? It's not a good trait to be a good apologizer. All right, apologies where the party took personal responsibility were more effective than people that said, yeah, it wasn't my fault. And this is a good customer service thing too. I had a story when I was at Roadway. I was the assistant manager in Atlanta, so I was responsible for the whole dock. So we had, they were called direct load. So Hagerstown, Maryland was where we sent all the freight going to Baltimore, DC and all, but when we had technology so we could see we had a bunch of freight for DC coming in, we would build a direct trailer for DC and it would bypass Hagerstown, less freight handling, saved us money, got to the customer quicker. Well, we had started at DC and we didn't get it filled, and so we didn't close it out, and so in that case I'm supposed to put some Hagerstown on the back and get it going. My sales manager, and this is pretty high up, the terminal sales manager comes out on the dock Monday morning and goes, hey, there's a shipment here for so-and-so in Washington, D.C., and it was due out for delivery today. And so I went and checked and said, sure enough, I said, yeah, that's my fault. I didn't get the trailer out. And I go, you want me to talk to your customer? He goes, yeah, because that customer is evidently wearing him out. So I get on the phone with the customer, and I said, sir, entirely my fault. I've got the shipment pulled to the rear of the trailer. We'll get it out within the next 2 hours. What more can I do? He goes, nothing. But he goes, you're the first person at Roadway who's ever told me the truth. Most people go, oh, well, it was somebody else's fault. So I went back and told the sales manager, and he goes, did he yell at you? And I go, no, he was fine. He goes, what'd you tell him? I said, the truth. Told him it was my fault. What more can somebody do after you say it's my fault?
Can't do much.
Well, you did it. I know, sir, I did. It's my fault. But you did it. Well, I know. We've established that. Okay? Now, what can we do to make it better after this point? So you want to get out of confrontation in a customer service type thing? Admit that it's your fault. Discussion's over at that point. What? Okay? So think about that. What if I said, well, it was so-and-so or something, then I'm making excuses. So I think it's very important, it goes to kind of personal responsibility, is to own your behavior and your mistake.
even in like a situation where it isn't your fault, do you think it's better to claim responsibility just to get it over with?
If it's protecting my people also, yeah, I would do that. If it's a supervisor, and actually it probably was my operations manager, should have probably done that, but the bottom line is it stopped with me. But yeah, I would to protect one of my people also. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, most of the time I think that's the case.
Does it matter to the customer whether it was my fault or the supervisor's fault?
Not at all.
Not at all. So the main thing at that point is, what can we do now? And we can't get to what do we do now till we get past, if it's important to them, who's to blame. And once you take responsibility for it, once again, conversation is pretty much over. Unless they want to just keep beating you up and then, okay. We established that. So apologies were more effective when the trust breach was an isolated incident rather than habitual. Absolutely. What happens when somebody keeps having to, and you guys are in relationships, when somebody keeps violating trust? You know, hopefully you don't stay in that relationship very long. Same with vendors, same with customers, it doesn't matter. All right, so justice, several forms. Distributive justice, which is the distribution of outcomes. And there's a big, in the political world today, about distributive justice, that everybody should be equal. Okay, should everybody be equal? No? Yes?
Depends on what you mean by equal.
I think there's a division between like equal and same. You know what I mean? Like you're equal under the law, but you're not the same. You know?
Well, there's a difference in, is there a difference in equal outcome and equal opportunity?
Yes.
Yes.
If you guys, if there's 5 of you guys competing for a job, and all 5 of you get interviews and one person is going to be hired, did you have equal opportunity? Is there going to be equal outcome?
No, unless you can chop people up.
The thing is, like, you give the citizens like the opportunity and same like equal playing field, and then it's up to them to differentiate themselves.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always said is get me to the interview. And if I don't get it to that point, whose fault is it? It's mine. Nobody else's. And I can own that. But if I don't get the interview and I don't get the opportunity, then maybe it's not my fault. And that goes to interpersonal skills, being a good, selling yourself, and getting actually to that interview. Because sometimes that's harder than actually getting the job. Especially when you guys are in entry-level positions and there's anybody go to Seminole Futures this past time? Probably what, 500, 600, 700 people in there, all competing for jobs. And some of the people had hiring 3, 4 people out of all that number. So if you can't get in the door, you're not going to get the job.
Do you think when you're in an interview, bringing up the fact that you didn't start on a good playing field, like let's say you started off from a poor family, single parent, you think that would be more beneficial than telling someone that you started off in a married household, middle income?
I mean, it might.
I see that you overachieve.
I would sell anything I could. Like the people at the other institution I work at, Flagler, those people work all day and go to school at night. So if I'm sitting in an interview, I'm going to go, you know what? I worked all day, went to school at night, gave up my nights and weekends studying to be able to achieve this degree. So what does that show? Determination, work ethic. So you want to sell anything you can that shows that you can accomplish things. So if you think that I grew up in a single parent home, it was rough, I had to work while I was in school and I still maintained my grades, yeah, that can sell.
Yeah, I think in that situation it's definitely effective to do that, but it's really easy to overdo it as well, because if you define yourself by like, oh, I'm a victim, like of course those things can be true. It can be more difficult if you started from not a level playing field. But if someone like if you don't tell them that and they find out later on, I think they'll appreciate you more. Because
yeah, and I was going to say that you got to have the right opportunity to infuse that also. I don't know that I'd want to just bring that out, but you could casually say, yeah, it was it was pretty tough because I was having to work, but make sure it's factual what you're saying.
All right.
And if that's factual, then yeah, if it helps, because what are they looking for? What are employees looking for? The best candidate, but to me, in talking to them, work ethic is the one single thing that can overcome almost anything. I mean, it's that and people skills Because I had a guy, an accounting guy I know, that was down here interviewing. He said, if somebody comes to us with a 4.0 average and has no extracurriculars on their sheet, he goes, we don't even talk to them. Well, why are extracurriculars important? What
Should we say you know how to manage your time, you have other interests, you're not just a
well-rounded. If it's community service, you're caring for other people. It shows character. So there's all kinds of other things other than just being smart. I mean, there's a ton of smart people out there, but if you're smart and lazy, how far is that going to take you? And so that's what they're looking for, especially work ethic. What I hear they're saying from this generation, the theory being, and it's just a theory, that you guys were given a whole lot more than our generation growing up, and you weren't made to work. And I said it's a theory, it's a generalization, okay, but it is with you. That is. Does your generation have a reputation? Yeah. So you've got to figure out how to overcome that on a one-on-one basis when you're in an interview, and whether it's fair or not. And as a general population, there's probably some truth to it. But as 60-something individuals in here, is it true for everybody? Absolutely not.
I think that works to your advantage too, because if they're because it's like a bad stereotype for our generation. So it makes you like shine brighter if you're able to.
If you can put yourself outside of that reputation.
Right.
Yeah. But you got to have examples, and good interviewers are not going to let you say, well, I think, I feel, I know. They're going to tell me a time when you were in a situation and this happened. And that's what they're looking for. And the interview, my first interview with Roadway, I know exactly the question that got me my job. I knew it. I knew I nailed it. He said, because I was going to start as a supervisor on the loading dock. Most of the guys that I was going to be supervising were like anywhere between 35 and 55, 60 years old. So these are like people that are my dad's age. And I'm going to be telling them what to do and demanding that they do it. And it's Teamsters. It's a very contentious work environment. And a lot of people don't fare well in that environment, especially 22-year-olds. And he said, how are you going to handle managing these guys that just don't want to work because they're not motivated? They get paid the same whether they unload one trailer or three. And I said, I'm not going to have the trouble at all. I said, sir, I was president of my fraternity, and we had a drug problem, and we set a rule at the first of the semester that when I was president, that said anybody got caught doing drugs in the house was going to be kicked out. And I said, I kicked out 2 people that I liked. So I'm not going to have a problem with these guys. I don't like them. I got hired on the spot because it was an example. It was not, I think, I feel, yeah, I can do that. I don't have any problem with that. Well, you don't know that. But I gave them an example. So that's why you guys that are in clubs, you guys that are in leadership roles, that's what you sell. Especially times that you can sell overcoming adversity, or times when things were tough. We were in a financial crisis, so we had to organize this, and I took the lead on it. Stuff like that is what's going to get you. It's going to get you hired. All right, procedural justice, the process of determining outcomes. I've seen one of the outcries, and we won't debate it in here, of President Thatcher's shutdown of the Greek organization. One of the biggest complaints, and I'm not making an opinion one way or the other, one of the biggest complaints was that there was not due process, okay, that procedural justice was not followed, that there should be, based on the rules of the institution, a process to determine what outcome should be. Okay, and once again, in a lot of cases, if your people are treated fairly, even though you might not get the outcome, as long as the process was fair, most of us feel okay with that. I got my day in court, I got my interview, but I didn't get the job. Well, then I can't blame anybody else because the process was fair. Interactional justice, how parties treat each other in relationship or one-on-one relationships, and then systematic justice, how organizations appear to treat groups of individuals. And that's very important in today's thing too. If you guys want to work for an organization who has biases towards groups of people, and what was the big Google? Was that Google that fired the engineer? Yeah, because the guy came out and spoke out against his employer in something that he deemed to be wrong, and he got fired. Okay, so that organizational or systematic justice, I mean, they had a good reason in their mind for doing that. Should you openly be able to criticize your employer?
If anything, you should keep it internal.
It's not your son.
What's that?
It's not like it's your son. Like, you know what I mean? Like your son, like a family.
Yeah, it's not like, but still, you got to look at the culture of the organization, and now it's there's some people that wouldn't want to work for Chick-fil-A.
I think it depends on the organization, because Google has this perspective of being like, oh, that's Google, they're like the hub of all knowledge in the universe, right? And then this guy comes out and says something that's, against the popular opinion, and they're tolerant to everything except something that goes against what they think. And I think that's different with that. So I think in that environment, if you're an employee, you can speak out versus something else like in the Army. Like, you can't say anything about our superiors because that's against your orders, right?
Right.
But so I think it depends on.
Yeah, it depends on the organization and what's the reputation that the organization is trying to go into. But they should hire people. But that's one of the things you guys should think about and research before you go to work with somebody. Is this an organization that has a culture that I think I'll be happy in? But one caveat to that: you can be in a great organization and draw a bad boss and still have a bad situation, because there's not 100%. 100% of the people aren't always good, honest, and uphold the values. And that's one thing I will say about Chick-fil-A. They don't play anybody that goes outside of their values. And I think that's why, you look at the success they've had in their arena, it's pretty successful. But it's because they have a no tolerance. Yes?
Wait, so did they ask you about your religious beliefs during the interview?
Do they ask you?
Yeah.
No. And
I got asked once. This summer I tried to get a job at Chick-fil-A and they were like, what are you? I said I was a Jew. I didn't get the job. I'm not sure if that's why. I can't prove that's why.
well,
They did ask.
I went through the process. Did I tell you guys I went through the interview and got approved by Chick-fil-A? Yeah, and one of the things I can't say for sure why I got the interview and why I got the process. I can say for sure that my application, if you read it, and I still have it, I was very involved in my church. I was one of the catalysts that started a Wednesday night program at our church in Arkansas. I was on session at my church here. I've been on 3 mission trips. Those are character things that Chick-fil-A embraces and espouses. Now, would they keep somebody out because they're not a Christian? Legally, I don't know if they can do that, but when you take 2,400 applications a day, you think it's easy for them to find qualified candidates?
Yeah, it's against the law to ask your religious beliefs. But I know, like, when I applied to Chick-fil-A, it was weird because when I had walked in to turn in an application and I got interviewed on the spot, and, like, I kind of had to think on my feet, but I just proactively kind of slipped some stuff in about, like, being involved. Like, I'm Catholic, so, like, I kind of put that in there just because I knew that would probably be, like, a plus. So, they didn't require it, but I thought probably a good thing to mention it.
Yeah, and the last 2 questions they asked me that they said would be a disqualifier, or one of them would be a disqualifier, is do you eat chicken? Because they said they had hired a guy one time that didn't eat chicken, and they didn't think that was representative of the brand. And the last thing they asked me is, did I drink alcohol?
Are you not allowed to drink alcohol?
No. No, because I told them the truth. I said, yeah, I get the beer occasionally. And I was still approved. So that was not but I just found it an interesting question.
They're checking for trustworthiness, probably. Because they want to see that you know.
I mean, once again, could they legally disqualify you for that? It's a legal thing. But I think lying would have been worse.
If you said no,
You know? I told them. I said, I drink, I have a beer. And I don't have a problem saying that. It's a legal substance. And all right, systematic. All right, so repairing the relationship, what might be caused, trying to figure out what's causing the present misunderstanding, what can I do to understand it better, or what might be causing a lack of trust, what can I do to repair trust that might have been broken. In most cases, you pretty much know what's causing the problem. I don't think that's a real issue. So other diagnostic steps, what might be causing one or both of us to feel coerced, what can I do to put the focus on persuasion rather than coercion, and what might be causing one or both of us to feel disrespected. Once again, guys, those are pretty obvious things. You guys know when you're being disrespected and when you're disrespecting somebody. And then the last thing, what might be causing one or both of us to get upset? What can I do to balance emotion and reason? So just very important. The takeaway I think from today is and I think that social media scares me for your generation a little bit. I think there's some absolutely phenomenal things that social media does for us and from communication. And I did not join Facebook for the longest time. I didn't want any part of it, but I had a high school reunion coming up, and that was our platform, so I do have a Facebook account. I don't, not one that goes on there, and I have friends my age that I know every move they make, and it's just a little more than I really want to know. But my message is just be careful because it follows you. It's part of your reputation, and employers, future people you do business with are going to check your social media. So I would guard that very safe because that is your reputation. Yes?
For what it's worth, there was this Muslim guy who worked for Chick-fil-A and refused to take part in a Christian prayer. He got fired and then he started suing. And they say there's like nothing illegal about it. Another thing, it says like Chick-fil-A is nosy as hell and they're always asking every employee questions, but there's nothing illegal about it.
I mean, dude, I mean, they can be whatever they want.
Well, I mean,
I've joked
I think the laws are important and they do protect people, but just from my own perspective, I don't want to work for an organization that doesn't want me there. There's more battles, more relevant battles for me to fight in my life. And when I'm not trying to force myself to work for an organization that I don't agree with that whole systematic justice type thing. Find an organization that aligns with your values, and it's going to make you a better, more productive employee, and it's going to make that organization better. But today with the laws and everything like they are, what about people that now identify as something? Is that going to be illegal to do that if you cross some company's culture? I mean, where does it stop? So it's really easy to sue a company nowadays, if that's what you wanted to do. But it just seems like counterproductive.
Do you think if you were going to be suing them for something like that, you would be worth your time for like going up against their corporate lawyers if you were just kind of like an individual?
Well, you would, in that case, you're not going to have any money. So what you would do is hire a law firm like Morgan & Morgan who would front the cost, and they're going to tell you very quickly, you're going to know how good a case you have. Because if I'm pulling everything out of my pocket to try your case, I got to think I'm going to win. If I don't, I'm not going to take your case. Right. So if you've got a good case, somebody will take it. But keep in mind, they're going to take 40% of your winnings, but they do that because they're going to front all the costs. All the expert witnesses, all their time at $300, $400 an hour. So if they take that case and lose, they get nothing. So what?
You don't pay anything.
No, you don't. In most cases, most people, average person walking in off the street, don't have enough money to fight some corporate lawyer. So you take it, and my wife works for PI, personal injury attorneys, and based on the merits of the case, they decide whether they take the case or not. Because they're no different than anybody else. They're not going to work for free. Now, they'll do it for free, but they've calculated the risk in what do we think we can get out of this, or the other side is, do we think we can settle? So if they think they can settle, you can take the case, you don't get that much deep into the case, you don't put out that much cost if you think you can get a settlement. And last story, let me tell you, Walmart several years ago, it's been quite a few years now. How many suits do you think they get for like slip and fall and stuff like that? Unbelievable. And they were settling them all, $5,000 and $10,000. So lawyers make a couple grand, person get $2 or $3 grand. So Walmart, it's been probably quite a few years now, drew a line in the sand and said, we will negotiate no more claims, we will go to trial with everything. And guess what happened? Their number of claims that they had dried up because the lawyers quit taking the case because it wasn't going to be an easy settlement. They had to go expend money to try to win, and there's a chance you don't win. So if you think there's something that can settle quickly, lawyers will jump all over that because that's easy money. But if you've got a case they can't win, and you think corporate on the other side is not going to settle, then they're going to have to put out a lot of money to try to win that case. And if they don't win, they get nothing. So that's the whole going to trial thing. Why so few cases go to trial?
Do you know for slip and fall accidents like that, they send a private investigator to see if you're actually still hurt?
Yeah,